So I thought I would do a quick video giving you my thoughts on the Edelrid Ohm device. There's not a lot of information out there for it, from what I can tell, there's actually not very many of the devices uh, in the country anyway. So I had a chance to use one the other day, so I wanted to give some thoughts on it. Um, the short end of the story right away is I think it's a great device. It's made extremely well, and with a couple nuances aside, it works very, very well. It does what it aims to do, which is let a smaller, lighter belayer belay a heavier climber. That being said, I don't think that I would recommend it for many people, many climbing partners. I think that there's some very critical aspects of it that need to be understood, and for anyone that does want to use it, I think it's incredibly important that they would understand those issues and then use the device with caution, even if they understand those. So let me give you some more detail about this, but first let me tell you a little bit about myself so you know where I'm coming from. I've been climbing for about 15 years, and I've been a professional in the industry for about 10 of those years. And I do not mean a professional climber, far from it. I mean that I've made my living in the climbing industry. I've been an American Mountain Guide Association trained and certified guide, so I've done professional guiding. Um, I run climbing gyms. The company that I work for has a number of climbing gym locations, and I run those. I oversee them. Um, I have instructed many students of climbing, whether that's through classes that the gyms offer. I've also taught university level climbing classes, both inside and outside, for uh, introductory and intermediate and advanced level climbers. So I've instructed hundreds of students. Climbed a lot outside as well, and I invented the wave bolt, which is a glue-in rock climbing anchor, and I've done a lot of route development. So I say all that just to give you some context of where I'm coming from. I have a wide range of experiences within the climbing industry for a number of years now, and so I think that I'm coming from a pretty good place to evaluate the Edelrid Ohm device. Okay, so what are some of the pros, the good aspects of the device? Well, it's very, very well made. There's no doubt about that. I don't think there's any critique at all of how the device is made or anything like that. It's quality construction. Um, the device works. It does what it is supposed to do, with some nuances that I'll come back to in a second. But as long as you take into account those nuances, the device works. It works very well, actually. And kind of from a deeper perspective, I think another good aspect of the device is that it allows the potential to create new climbing partnerships, or even just expand the climbing experience that someone could have, because they could have people belay for them, or belayers can belay for other climbers that they otherwise couldn't belay for because the weight difference would be just too big. So to the extent that it broadens people's experience and opens up climbing to people and climbing partnerships, I think that's a good thing. What are some of the cons, the negative aspects that I see of this, or at least the critical aspects? So first of all, on the surface level, when I tested this, I tested it with another climber and then one belayer. And myself and the other climber both outweighed the belayer by 80 to 100 pounds. So we had a large weight difference. And once we got comfortable using the device and taking some falls on it, in every case, myself and the other climber were slammed into the wall because of how hard of a catch the device creates. So just from my experience climbing on it, I was taking shorter falls. I was taking longer falls on about a 35-degree overhanging wall. So, pretty steep. And I was getting slammed into the wall. I mean, like way more so than I would ever actually want to do in climbing. So if I were really climbing, I would never want to hit the wall that hard. It was so hard that we actually decided it would be unsafe to experiment with the device on a less steep wall. We had planned to try taking some falls on a 10-degree wall, but we just decided that it would just be too dangerous because like it was starting to hurt getting slammed into the wall so hard. And that's with a big weight difference. The nuances that I've mentioned with the device. So first of all, and this is from the climbing perspective still, you can't move too fast. Now in the videos that Edelrid produces on this, they say that it doesn't affect the rope travel. Well, in our experience, we found that it did. Not all the time, but enough of the time where it was definitely noticeable. So if you needed to pull clipping slack quickly, oftentimes the device would start to kind of, catch, so to speak, or pinch the rope. And, you could definitely tell it was there. Even if I made some dynamic moves on purpose, I could feel the rope drag there as the device was starting to tilt up and increase the friction on the rope. From the belayer's standpoint, what we found is that, well, in fact, the first couple times we took some test falls with it, the device did not work. It may have worked. It may have produced a little bit of extra friction, but not much. I mean, we both took very large falls down to the first bolt and ended up, smashing into our belayer. I actually kicked the belayer in the face, accidentally, obviously, but I mean, the fall was big enough for me to do that. And we couldn't figure out why, because that's not supposed to happen. I mean, that's the whole point of what the device is supposed to solve. Well, what we determined after several more experiments is that the amount of slack that the belayer has out is really important. And if there's too much slack out, the device takes too long to work because that slack has to kind of go through the system. So if the belayer has just a little bit too much slack, or a lot of it, but even just a little bit, the climber will, free fall as normal until that slack goes through the device, and then the device can get, pulled up and tilt and start to increase the friction on the rope. Well, the problem is, especially if you fall lower on a route, by time that little bit of slack goes through the system, it's already too late, and you're falling too far. And then when the device, pinches down on the rope, it's sort of a violent catch. So the belayer has to be right on the money, so to speak. What we found is there's a very small window between where what is too much slack and the right amount. So if the belayer is off just a little bit, the device is going to take longer to work and really effectively not work in the way that it's supposed to, or at least as the way that the belayer and climber are anticipating. Another real downside that we found with the device is that the belayer has almost no control of their belay. And what I mean by that is, if you are belaying normally without this device, sometimes you might have a little bit of a tighter belay. Sometimes you might have a little bit of a looser belay. Sometimes you might stand, a little bit further away from the wall or a little to the side. Sometimes you might, purposely give a hard catch, by sitting back or stepping back. Sometimes you might give a softer catch by kind of, allowing yourself to be lifted off the ground or whatever. You can't do any of that with this device because you need to stand, about a meter, away from the plumb line of the device, as the directions say. But more importantly, you have to have just the right amount of slack out. So you can't really sit back and give a harder catch with the device. But more importantly, you can't soften up the catch. Because if the belayer, even if the belayer tries to jump, all they're doing is introducing more slack into the system. So the climber is just going to fall further until it, kind of pinches down and kind of catches the rope. So there's really no control over the belay. We all commented that, we kind of felt disconnected because it's just, the device is basically doing the catching. And maybe that's just something to get used to. I don't know, but we just felt that it just felt disconnected, and ultimately the belayer just didn't have that control. So to kind of wrap this up, what I'm getting at here is, I think my main concern with this device is not that it won't work, because as long as you do the nuances, it will work. But it's really that I think people could easily use this device as a crutch, so to speak, that would just allow them to go and belay someone that they couldn't otherwise belay. If a light person can't safely belay a heavier person, they can very easily just go get this device, hook it up to the wall, and boom, now they can belay them. And they don't really have to think too much about it. And so I can imagine situations where, a dad might just go and get this device so their kid can belay them, on their project or something like this. And I think what that does is that it really dumbs down the belaying process, or it can. And I think that, it might even be the case that there are just some pairs of climbers that just, can't climb together, or at least lead climb together. Sometimes the weight difference is just too big. And I think what I would much rather encourage people to do is to really practice and really learn and really try to control their belay of a heavier climber. And if they just can't do it, then I think it would be far better for them to just say, shoot, too bad. The weight difference is just too much and we can't climb together. And then go find a third person or another couple or whatever the case is to find a suitable belayer. I think that, it's just, I think there's a real danger here of people just sort of absent-mindedly using this device to get away with belaying someone that they really shouldn't be belaying. And the problem comes in when they don't have the right amount of slack out or whatever the case is, and the device doesn't work as they expect it to because they weren't doing it just perfectly. Let me give you an example of what I mean here. So I climbed with a woman for about 3 years. She's my main climbing partner. And I outweighed her by about 70 pounds. And I've never had a better belayer than her. Over the years, she caught literally hundreds of my falls. Never once did I feel like I fell too far or it was dangerous or out of control. She was an excellent belayer, and she learned to be an excellent belayer because she had to learn how to control the size difference between us to be able to, safely belay me. And she did, and it worked, and it was just fine. And I know other couples that have done this, and they belay, despite great weight differences, perfectly fine and perfectly safe. And what I would really encourage people to do is to work towards that goal. Practice. Learn how to belay safely and properly, instead of just relying on this device to allow you to do something that you can't otherwise do. So to wrap it up, I'm not saying the device is bad. I think the device is actually great. I just think that it could be misused, and I think that it could very easily become a crutch for people to do things they shouldn't otherwise be doing. If a climbing pair really wants to use it, and hopefully they've tried to learn, to control the belay, and they just can't do it, but they still really want to climb together. I really think that it would be critically important that pair really understands the Ohm device, understands how exactly they have to belay for it to work, and to always be ready for the chance that it won't work as they expect. Because otherwise, the climber's falls are going to be really big potential ground falls, or potential, slamming into the belayer, or any number of other issues that could happen. So I hope that was helpful. I wish I had pictures or video of our climbing, but we weren't able to do that. So please, if you have comments or thoughts or questions, share them below. But let's try to keep it instructive. Let's try to keep it, uh, you know, helpful, and a nice adult discussion about it, instead of just flaming one way or the other. So again, if you have questions or comments, let's talk about it in the comments. Thanks for watching.